I was born in Darda, Albania in 1945. And in 1964, a cousin of mine, Pandi, and I escaped from Albania, from Darda, and went to Greece, where I stayed for 2 years, and then I came to the United States. My name is George Korchari, even though in Albania nobody knows me by that name. I was known as Guri Korchari. Guri in Albanian means rock. And the reason I was named like that, my official name was George. The reason I was named like that is because my parents had a lot of children before my older sister and me that died. And according to religion, you know, the Greek religion and all that stuff, is that if they named me Guri, I would be as strong as a rock. And the other thing is, for the first 5 years of my life, I was dressed and I was, appeared as a girl. So the devil wouldn't take me because I was a boy and the devil wants boys. So, and then after 5 years, they put me back into regular clothes for a boy. The other thing they did is they put an earring in my ear for the first 5 years so I would appear like a girl. And as a matter of fact, I still have the pierced ear now. So. And while I was young, I had a very good friend of mine in Darda, which is the town where I was born and I grew up. And as young boys, if you want to say, we always had the desire to go far, to go to the Greek mountains, that we called it. My town, Darda, is very close to Greece. It's a matter of fact, it's less than 10 miles from Greece. So we would climb these mountains and we would look at the Greek mountains and we had the desire to go over there. And many, many, many times my friend and I got up, we packed a bag with some food and some clothes and we said, okay, this is the day that we are going to escape. And we started going and we got up to a point and then we turned around and we went back home again. So we did that a number of times. Then when I went to high school, I stayed with my aunt, my father's sister, for 4 years. And just a part that we'll make a little bit more point a little bit later, but their family, there were my uncle, my aunt, and 3 boys. Only one of them was going to school. Everybody else was working. And my uncle, he was one of the first partisans in Albania. That's what they called the group of people that fought against the Germans. So he had a good position. And staying there for 4 years, I noticed that at the end of each month, they were tight for money, with 4 people working and only 1 kid going to school. So my father was helping with things for my stay there. And the other thing that I did a lot when I was young, I was listening to Radio Free Europe. Now, keep in mind that if you ever got caught listening to Radio Free Europe in Albania at that time, you might as well say goodbye to everybody else because you would never see anybody else. So listening to that, it was very, very hidden, and I had to be careful. I kind of was safe because I was listening at my uncle's house, who was a member of the Communist Party, so they wouldn't watch those places that much. So I kind of felt a little bit safe, even though I was listening very late at night. And the last year of high school, I started getting the desire to escape. I wanted to get out of there because I saw what my uncle and his family had with 4 salaries, and they couldn't make their ends meet. And another interesting point, there was a person, a boy or a man from my town who, when he graduated from the university, they sent him out of Albania for more training. Then when he got back, he became a professor at the university. And the year after the first year of him working, when he was in town, they were talking among friends, how life was and all that. And we, as younger boys, we would hang around trying to eavesdrop what they were talking about, and all that. But I heard him say that he saved his whole salary for 1 year. So at the end of the year, he could buy a suit because he needed one to become a professor. So in other words, 1 year salary for a suit. And the funny part to that was that about 3 or 4, maybe 5 years ago, I met that same person here in the United States. And I told him the story, and I said, I have to really, really thank you for making me get out of Albania because of, the suit. And he said, what you don't know is that year I had a second job so I could save the money because the salary wasn't enough. So these things led me to believe that it's got to be better somewhere else. And we had some relatives in the United States who once in a while, they would send some packages and things. And, we saw that, the life over there was much better than what we had. And my point was, it can't be worse than this. I remember one time my aunt sent me a pencil, one of these beautiful pencils with pictures and all that. And I had that one for 4 years. I never sharpened it because I was afraid that it was going to wear off. I didn't want to lose it. I saved that as the pencil from United States. So anyway, and that last year I finally wanted to approach somebody for escaping, but the problem in Albania was that you didn't know who to talk to, because if, for whatever reason, whoever you talked to turned around and went to the police and reported you, that's it. Most of the times what they would do with people like that, if they didn't throw them in jail, they would take them into a place in the middle part of Albania where it was like a camp where they put all the bad people, and there it was you just work and nothing else. So I had to be careful, how I approached this. So one time my cousin Pandi and I were going to Korça from Darda, and there was no vehicles or anything like that, so naturally we had to work. And we had my sister and his sister with us too. So the two sisters were in front of us talking to each other, and Pandi and I were a little bit behind. So I decided this is my chance. I'm going to have to do it. Whatever happens, happens. I don't care. So it took me about 2 hours here and there, throwing a little, jabs about, about this, what about the country and all that, to get a feeling how he felt. I was a little bit not that much afraid because he went to school for 2 years, and then they kicked him out of school, the government, that is. When I say they, is the Albanian government. And they sent him back to Darda to work on the farm, and he was very upset about it. So I said, this is a good time to approach him. So I finally brought the question, and I said, hey, I'm thinking of escaping, so what do you think? And he said, yes, let's do it. And I was so happy, man. From there all the way to Korça, I was almost like singing because I finally found somebody. And from that point, we started planning for a year. After high school, I went to the University of Albania for 1 year for physics. And in Albania, you had no choice of what degree you wanted. The government would tell you what you would go and where you would go and all that. So they picked physics for me, and I went to university for 1 year for physics. And during that whole year, we communicated, Pandi and I communicated, and trying to plan things on how to do them and, where we were going to do it, that kind of stuff. So getting close to the end of the year, I started thinking about it, and I say, why am I busting my here, trying to graduate, to finish the first year, because it's not going to count. It's going to be lost. So I kind of lost interest in school. But I was afraid to lose totally interest because I had the grades at that time in Albania were A, B, C, and D. So I had A's on all the courses, and I was afraid to drop down to B's on any, because then it would bring attention to somebody and say, wait a minute, what is happening with that guy? So finally, my cousin and I, Pandi, I developed a secret code, if you want to call it, that we would communicate together. I had a secret code with my girlfriend from high school that I would write to all the time. And then when Pandi and I started, I rearranged all the things and I created another secret code that Pandi and I would write to each other. And the funny part is, when I was in Darda, I wasn't afraid of leaving the letters, on the open, because nobody could read it. So one time my sister saw one of the letters and says, "Oh, you got a letter from your girlfriend?" I said, yeah. Little did she know that it was from Pandi. So in one of the letters at the end, approaching May, 1964, I wrote to Pandi. No, actually it was in June of 64. I wrote to Pandi, and among other things in the letter, I said, listen, I've had it, with school here. How about if we plan to escape now in June? Because our original plans were to escape in July. So I said, why don't we escape now in June? Because I've had it. And I said, if you agree with me that you want to escape now in June, what I'll do is I'll come home before my last exam at the university, and then we can go. So I said, if you agree with me, send me a telegram, and you can say whatever you want to in the telegram, but if you put a number in there, I'll know that you want to escape now. Well, not even too long after that, maybe like 2 days after that, I get a telegram from Pandi and he said, good luck in your finals. And that's it. And I said, oh boy, he doesn't want to go. I got really down. So I had over a week before one of the finals and my last final. So I said, I'm not going to stay here. So I grabbed a couple things and I said, I'm going to go to Darda and study there and then go back to Tirana to take the final exam. So I didn't take all the things that I wanted to take if I had known that we were going to escape. So when I got to Darda, I met with Pandi and he said, okay, let's go and plan now. How are we going to do it? I said, okay, well, we did that. No, when? Like what day now? So then I realized that he thought I went to the Darda to escape. Oh, I didn't know that before I went, but I didn't say a word. I said, okay. So we started doing the final plans there for escaping. And the interesting part, another thing is we planned to escape on Wednesday. Keep in mind, on Friday, I had to go to Korça so I could go back to Tirana to take my final. So we had to do it before Friday. So we planned for Wednesday. Well, as luck, unluck, or whatever you want to call it, had it, Pandi's father notified him that his sister was coming to Darda from Korça, walking naturally. So he had to go to Korça to get his sister to bring her to Darda on Wednesday. So that ruined our plans. So I gave my cousin, a little money because at college, at the university, they were paying me as an athlete. I was in the track and field team. So I had a little money. So I gave my cousin some money and I said, buy a little bread and buy a small bottle of cognac, in case we need it, for whatever reason. I don't know. We weren't drinkers anyway. So he went there. So naturally it got pushed to Thursday. Thursday, the whole day kept raining like crazy, and I mean raining. And the town was loaded with army trucks and army people. We knew immediately because that was a sign that there was some trouble on the border. That's what would happen every time. Any time there was trouble on the border, army would come to Darda, to our town, and then go and try to catch whatever they were trying to do. Many times, whatever times they would catch, if they would see anybody trying to escape, they wouldn't try to stop them. They would just back up and go boom, 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 and that's it. Then they would take the body of the killed people, put them in an open truck, and take them to all the towns that were close to the border and leave them in the middle of the town as a saying, like, see what happens to the people who try to escape. So as kids, we saw many, many bodies full of holes, just being dropped there. So when we saw the soldiers all over the place, we said, oh boy, this is going to be crazy now, because we had to escape that night. So we waited and waited, and we said, okay, the rain is going to help us because it's going to make noise. The soldiers won't be out looking for us, that kind of stuff. So we're all set. Well, again, as luck would have it, came, about 6 or 7 o'clock. Rain stopped and the moon came out. It was like daylight outside. You could see probably for a half a mile. I mean, bright moon. As a matter of fact, I checked on the internet, and the day after we escaped was a full moon at that time. So anyway, we didn't know what to do, and one of the kind of interesting points was what to do. So I said, why don't we go and get a haircut? And there was a person in town there that would give haircuts to people. He was the same guy that fixed their shoes and fixed their furniture and all that, how it's in small towns. So we went to get a haircut. I got a haircut. I was sitting down, and he had a guitar over there, so I was just stringing, making noises with it. And my cousin is getting a haircut. Now, to go back a little bit, with the backstory, during World War II, Germans had a rule that if anybody got killed in a town, any German that is, got killed in a town, they would go to that town and take 3 to 5 of the top men and shoot them, in town. So during World War II, a German soldier got killed in our town. So they came and they got the 3 top people of the town, and one of them was Pandi's uncle. So, and they brought him up town and they shot him. So that's the backstory. Now we're sitting there getting a haircut, and as we get in a haircut, keep in mind we're planning to escape that night. The guy that was cutting the hair, let's call it the barber, said, it's really funny, he said. I remember, he said, the day that your uncle got killed, he was sitting right here on this chair and giving a haircut to him. And I thought my cousin was just going to drop down. I mean, he turned white and he started like this. And I went making noises to wake him up. I mean, I don't know how he managed to stay, awake. But anyway, so that was kind of interesting. Then later on, we planned that my cousin was going to come over to my house. My house had 2 stories, and I was going to throw from the second window a bag of my clothes and what I needed. I didn't mention that for the 1 year that we were planning escape, my cousin had a little cabin in backyard, and that was our meeting place. We would meet there and plan all the time. So he would take the bag and go there. So I went home. I started playing with my nephew, who was 5 years old at the time. And I always liked to have a stick walking. So I had a perfect stick that I was saving for a long time for the escape. So during the day, I got that stick and I went on the path that I would have to go to my cousin, and I hid it on the side of a door there so that I could pick it up on the way to the cabin. Well, we're waiting, and my sister was out looking for some of our sheep that hadn't made it home. So finally, she gets home, and she walks in with my stick. And I said, "What is this stick doing down there? I know it was here today." I said, "I don't know. I don't know how it made it." I didn't know what to say. So anyway, it was gone. We had dinner, and after dinner, my mother said to my little nephew, said, "Okay, kiss your uncle goodbye because you won't see him again." Because what she meant was that because the next day I was going to go to Korcha and then to Tirana for the final. Well, when she said you won't see him again, my heart just boom, I thought was going to explode, because I knew that meant something else to me, that I wasn't going to see him again because I was going to escape. So anyway, and then a little bit later, he went to sleep, and now I had to go, but I had to figure out a way how to tell him that I wasn't going to return home that night, because otherwise they're going to start looking for me. So I told him, I said, "I'm going to go over to Pandi's cabin, and we're going to play backgammon. Today, the whole day, he killed me on backgammon, so I want to get revenge. And I'm going to play until I win. And if I don't win, I won't get back. Okay? I'll get back in the morning." My mother started again. "Oh my God, you can't do that. You do that and I won't talk to you ever." There's another explosion, because I knew I wasn't going to talk to her forever or for a long time. But my sister said, "That's okay, it's okay. Just go ahead. Don't worry about when you get home." So I left the place. We went to the cabin and we started planning doing our last things that we had to do. Some of the things that we had discussed during the year was if we were going to have shoelaces, we were going to tie the shoelaces 4 or 5 times and put them in, so that in any case that we had to run, the shoelace wouldn't get stuck on a stick and then the shoe come loose. So, and another thing that we had planned on doing is we put on our backpack, or the back thing that we had, on top of it, we had a piece of our clothing and it was loose right on top. And that was in case the soldiers would see us and send the dogs after us. And the point was, because we said that if at any time we get, detected, and we're going to go, each one is on its own way, we're not going to go together. You go whatever way you want, and I'll go whatever way I want. So the clothing there was, if they sent the dogs after us, then we take the piece of clothing, drop it, and normally the dogs would get to that, and get the piece of clothing, and they would wait until the soldiers come. So it would buy us a little time. So those were kind of the plans that we had there. We finally got our packs, and we started going. My town is in a very weird valley. There's 2 rivers coming like this, and the town is here. So we went down the town, crossed one little river, over a mountain. Now, keep in mind, during the whole year, maybe 4 or 5 times, Pandi and I went to the top of one of the mountains where you could see the whole area that we were going to get. And we planned, we said, okay, now we're going to go here, we're going to go to that point, we're going to go to that point, and we're going to go to that point. We made our plans. So the most interesting part is that we had no compass, we had nothing. And that whole night, we hit all the points that we said we wanted to hit. Luck. I don't know what to call it. So we started going, and at one point we got to on the other side of the mountain was a big river. Now, as I said, it was raining a whole day, so the river was very, very, hard, and very strong and high. we had to cross it at some point. So when we got to the river, we were walking parallel with the river, and there were bushes blocking us. So when we got to a point, there was a kind of a hole in the bushes, and we said, "Oh, there must be a passing place here because people had gone through." So we started going. Now, this is something that we never planned, but for whatever reason, Pandi was going first, and I was behind him, and we were like 10 feet apart, something like that. So when we got there, we said, okay, we got to go. So Pandi goes first, and I said, okay, what's happening? He says, come on. I thought it was safe, so I take a step, boom, right in the middle of the river. I turn around, and there's Pandi hanging on the bushes, like this, so we wouldn't get wet. So I said, well, come on, let's get out of here. We crossed the river, but we had to be careful because it was, so strong that we had to plant one foot down before you lifted the other one, because otherwise, the river would take you down. So anyway, we made it across, and I had a pair of boots with ties. My cousin had a pair of boots, high boots, that were rubber boots up to the knee. So when he fell in the river, the boots got full of water. So he's on the side over there trying to get his boots off to get the water out, and he couldn't. So finally he said, help me. So I strapped the boots, he tried to push me and all that. We couldn't get the boots off. So he says, I have an idea. So he lifts his legs up in the air. Well, the water came out and it went all over him. And he's like, because naturally the water was cold. So then we continued going up. Now, we knew that the army had a post that was on top of a little valley here and on top of a small mountain. And later on, they built a new post that was further, inside Albania. And we knew that the soldiers would go from the old post to the new post, back and forth. And we had a rule for the whole evening that we would walk for probably 2-3 minutes and then stop and listen for 2-3 minutes, and then slowly walk again, because we didn't want to make any noises and we were afraid. And every step was not walking, we would put the toe in first and then step in so we wouldn't break any branches and make noise. And believe me, in a place like that with no noises around, a branch breaking would be like a very loud noise. So when we got to the path where the soldiers would go, it was all muddy and it was not very wide, and as we had planned before, at that point we stopped, listened, and then we decided to walk. So when we walked across the path, we walked backwards, stepping back, so that if the soldiers would walk by there and they would see the footprints, they would think that the footprints were going toward Albania. So again, hoping to buy us some time. So we cross that way, and then we get to the point where we're close to the old guardhouse. Now, as children, we had been to that guardhouse because once a year we would go to entertain the soldiers there, and sing and whatever the heck. So I knew what the place looked like. It was a building on top of a thing here. On 4 corners, north, south, east, west, there was a big machine gun standing there, ready to protect whatever. So when we got close to that, like I said, there was a big field in there. So we stopped at the edge of the field to see and what was happening. So when we saw there, we saw the soldier, the guard, coming around. And then he would go around like this and then would go around the building again. I had a watch that my uncle from United States had sent me that had phosphorus hands, in part. So I could tell the time and all that. So we stood there for a long time, timing the guard, how long it would take for him from the time he disappeared until the time he appeared, because that's the time we had to go across that field, which was totally open. So we waited and waited, and finally we figured out we had 3 minutes to cross the field. So I said to my cousin, I said, okay, now we got to go at the edge of the woods so that if by accident somebody else comes out, they won't see us. He said, no, because if there's any soldiers there, they would be right at the edge of the woods. Well, we argued for a long time. No, we'll go this way. No, we'll go that way. And finally said, listen, we got to get out of here. We can't sit here, arguing. And so let's go. So he got going first. And then after him, I got going, walking down, bent down with the clothes there and walking as fast as we could to get across the field. Well, when we got at the end of the field, without seeing who was going where, my cousin had gone this way. I went a little bit further. And when I got at the edge of the woods there, some birds were in the bushes in there. So as soon as I got there, the birds flew away. It was a burp, 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 burp. And I stood up and I totally froze. I couldn't talk. I couldn't do it. I couldn't move anything. I thought it was the machine gun that was after me. So I stood there without moving like this. So my cousin came over, he shook me like this, and he said, come on, we gotta go. So we left. As I tell people, if I never died from being scared at that time, I'll never die from being scared. So we continued walking, and we got up to a point, and we knew the guards wouldn't go all the way to the border. They would guard further in. And the border, as we knew it, was I don't know what to call it, like a soft strip, an area of like 10 feet or whatever. They would keep it soft so that if anybody crossed the border, they would see the footprints. So we knew that, so we started going. But we said at the beginning that we will not do anything until we are 1,000% sure that we are in Greece. Otherwise, no talking, nothing. Because we had heard other stories that what people that try to escape would do, they would go across the border, but little did they know that the border at that point bent around the other way, so they would cross the border into Greece, and then they would continue and cross the border back to Albania, thinking they were free, and they would get caught. So that's why we said we're going to be sure before we make any kind of noise. Well, we passed one of those soft strips, and we said, okay, we gotta go. Bushes, very hard to walk. Next thing we know is another soft strip. Next thing we know is another soft strip. We passed through 4 of those 4 strips. What they were doing is that if you didn't know and you crossed one of those soft strips, and you'd say, yay, we made it, we got out, and they would come and boom, 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 cut you down. So we kept going. And at one point, it started getting a little bit bright outside. So at one point, we were walking, and I looked up, and I noticed a big Greek mountain. And I knew that was Greek, but I knew that the border was going this way. That means we were just going in Albania parallel with the border. We weren't going toward the border. So when I realized that, I said to Pandi, look, we're going the wrong way. So we turned 90 degrees and we started walking. And that was the first time that I walked in front of Pandi, and I was going kind of fast. And just to be funny, he says, hey, well, why are you going so fast like somebody's chasing you? So anyway, we caught up. Then we went from one peak, and we said, we'll go from this peak to the other peak to that peak until we are sure. We went 1 peak, 2 peaks, and then we went up to 1 peak, and at this time the sun had come out. It was really nice out there. And we looked at the way bottom of that peak. There was a kind of a ruined town, ruined houses, and stuff like that. So we kept looking, and we said, we knew all the towns around our area that were Albanian, and that was not one of the towns. So that was the first time that we were 100% sure that we were in Greece. So to celebrate, we took out the bottle of cognac. We had a sip or a couple of sips of cognac, which, made us a little bit, whatever. And I stood up and I wanted to scream, hey, we made it. But the whole night, we had no voice whatsoever. We were talking like this. So I stood up and I said, my voice wouldn't come out. So finally we realized, and we started running down that mountain. We got to the bottom of there, and there was one house that was a ruined house. There was this lady that was hanging some clothes outside there to dry. And she said something to us in Greek, but neither one of us could speak Greek at the time. So my cousin said to her, he says, sorry, we don't understand Greek. We are from Albania. And then she said, oh, welcome to Greece in Albanian. Luckily, she could speak Albanian because she had spent some time in Albania, apparently. So anyway, they took us into the house, and probably more than half of the house was totally ruined. And there were a couple rooms on the side where they were staying. So we got into one of those rooms, and they had a beautiful fire in front in the fireplace. And actually, we took some of our clothes that were soaking wet. We hung them in there a little bit to dry. And then we noticed that on the side, they had a basket full of oranges. Now, the only way you could get oranges, especially in my town, is you had to kill somebody or know somebody or whatever, because you couldn't get them. And then she came out to give us some bread, and the bread was white. And we looked at it, we said, oh my God, if they have white bread here and oranges here, I think we are in the right place. So we were happy with that too. So after a little while, we had her husband, the woman's husband, who was one of the shepherds, called a friend of his to come over because they were going to take us from there, go to a town where a small army base was, to turn us into, the army. And this was 4 hours away again, after the whole night walking 4 more hours. So we walked another kind of interesting point on that is, at one point as we were walking, one of the shepherds spoke Albanian, the other one didn't. So the two shepherds started kind of arguing with each other, back and forth. We had no idea what was going on. So we asked the one that could speak Albanian. He said, what's going on? He said, the path that we're going to, after this big dip here, it goes very, very close to the Albanian border. Almost like on the Albanian border, not even a foot away from it. And we heard that and we said, oh my God, they know we escaped. If they are there, what's to stop them from just coming right over, grabbing us and going back? And we were scared, we told the shepherd that could speak, no, we will walk down here. We don't care. We will do it. We'll do it. The other guy said, no, like this. And he had the rifle in his arm and in his shoulder. So he said, okay, we'll do it. So we walked inches from the Albanian border. And once we got to the other side, Pani and I started running to get as far away as we could from the border. So from there, they took us to the town where the army base was. And they took us in, they fed us. They were very, very nice there. They gave us food and all that. So then at one point, they were waiting for the jeep to come from the city there to pick us up, to take us to the city. So while waiting, we were out on the yard there, and they had 2 or 3 dogs loose in the yard. So we started kind of playing with the dogs. And then we said, oh, great, we're going to be nice to the dogs. So we grabbed the bread that we had on our back, and we tossed it to the dogs. The dogs smelled at it, and they just walked away. They wouldn't eat it. I mean, it was dark, and believe me, if you could squeeze it hard enough, you would get water out of it, But that's the bread that we had in Albania. So they came with the jeep. They took us from there, and they took us to a city in the northern part of Greece. It's called Kastoria. And there, they kept us for 42 days to interrogate us, to find find out if we were really escaping or if we were Albanian spies going to Greece, gather information, and then go back. I'm sure that happened, to other times, so they were careful. So for 42 days they kept us. It was in a house that was all, yard was fenced. And we were free to walk around, that area. But at night we had to sleep in our room. And our room had a small window with bars, and they locked it every night. So in other words, we were in jail there for 42 days. After 42 days, apparently we convinced them that we were escaping, so they sent us from there to second biggest city in Greece called Thessaloniki. There we waited for 10 days to get our documents. Now, they gave us a choice at the time. Because we were from that part of Albania that at one time was Greek, and Greece calls that still as part of their country. We were we were born in Albania, but we had the citizenship from Greece. Now, that was one case. Said, if we gave you cards like that, then you would have to go wherever you want to. You're free because you're Greek. But if we give you a paper that says you are born in Albania with Albanian citizenship, then we have to send you in a camp where they kept all the people that escaped, and there you would wait for your turn to go to wherever you wanted to, however long that took. Well, naturally, we picked the first option, so they gave us the papers, and from there they sent us to another city north of Greece called Ioannina. And after about a week or 2 weeks there, we went to Athens, where we had some people that they knew about us. So we were free, and we could do whatever we wanted to. In Athens, I found a church organization that had money to help Albanians, and especially Albanian students. Somebody had left millions and millions, apparently. So got in contact with that. To make a long story short, I enrolled at the university because my goal was to finish school, higher school. So I enrolled at the University of Athens there, and the church was paying my tuition, and all that. And at that time, they were paying us for living, for food, and whatever we needed at the time. Well, after a year there, my cousin decided that he wanted to get out of there and come to the United States. He had 5 cousins there. In the United States. And one of those cousins was Glenn's mother. So he got in contact with them and did all the papers, and he came to the United States. I decided I was going to stay in Athens until I finished college, and then I was going to try to go to the United States. Well, that year, that means the second year, around April and May, they overthrew the government in Greece 7 times in 2 months, 2 or 3 months. It was riot after riot after riot. And one time I was at movies, and I heard a lot of noises outside. So when I got out, I started walking to the center of Athens, and there were people there flipping cars and burning cars, and you could hear shots, boom, 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 all over. I don't know what they were shooting, if they were live bullets or rubber bullets, but I got really scared, so I stayed at the edge of the square by the stores. And when I got to a point, right behind me, a smoke grenade came right to the window, cracked the window, and went in the store. And that did it to me. From there to the place where I was staying, I ran without stopping, and it took me about 15 minutes, and it would take the bus over half an hour to get there. So I didn't stop anywhere, and I just flew back, and I said, okay, if I wanted to get killed, I would have stayed in Albania. I didn't come here to get killed. So at that point, I decided to make the papers and come to the United States. So I communicated with my cousin, and he arranged with the husbands of two of those cousins that he had. The cousins were all female, by the way. So they helped me, and they did all the papers for me to come to the United States, because otherwise I couldn't come here. So I did all the papers, and I came to the United States. They came and picked me up in New York when I got off the boat, because I came on the boat. 12 days on a boat to come from Greece to the United States. And they were 12 days that I wish they had been 12 months, because I had that great time on that boat. But anyway, so I started working here, and I was going out with a school teacher at the time, and I told her that my desire is to finish college. I don't care what it takes and what it is. I want to finish college. She gave me a piece of advice that to this day I never regretted, and he said, George, colleges in the United States are very expensive. If you want to go to college, you let them draft you into the Army, and then when you get out of the Army, you can use the GI Bill to go to college. They called us, the first year they called us once and for draft. At that time, back in 1966, a draft was active, so they called us. And the first time we couldn't pass because really we couldn't speak English. We know, so they didn't get us. At the end of the first year, they called us again for draft. Now, my cousin had no intentions to stay there or anything, so again, he said, he had no intentions of going into the service because that was the Vietnam War era. So he again, fakely, he said, "Minos pica English." So they sent him out. But I wanted to get drafted because of the advice that the teacher gave me. So I took all the tests. I passed the tests, and I got drafted in the Army. So I went in the Army for 2 years, and then when I got out of the Army, after 1 year, next year after that, I did all the things. I applied at schools, and I got accepted at a few colleges, and one of the colleges that I got accepted was Lowell Tech, that was at the time. Now is the University of UMass, University of Massachusetts at Lowell. So anyway, I went to school. I finished school, and then I got a job, and I worked for 35 years until I retired 10 years ago. So that's kind of the story of my life.
But when did they know you had escaped?
Oh, they knew that morning, the morning of our escape. They knew it. Because, they had to know because I had to go to Korča and then to Tirana that morning. So my mother and sisters are, where is George? Where is George? Where is Guri? Because that's what they called me at the time. And when they went to the cabin to find us, we left a letter. I had a letter written for my mother, and Pandi had a letter for his parents. So in the letter, I said, I'm sorry for what I'm doing, but, this is something that I wanted to do for a long time, and, we're escaping. So we had no idea at the time if we were going to make it or not, but luckily we did. Within probably 1 or 2 hours, the whole army was all over the town and going all over the place and looking, hoping that they would find us, whatever. But, oh man, they knew it immediately. The interesting part is, like I said, we escaped on Thursday. On Saturday, we had the final for my for physics. And one of my best friends, actually my best friend from high school, his name was Vanjush. we went to college for the same degree, and we were roommates. We were very, very close. So after my escape, he said, as he told me, because he came to the United States years later, he died here, but as he told me, he said he had just started taking the final when the security went in, grabbed him out of there. He said they had him for hours and hours, asking him questions and this and that, trying to find out if he knew about my escape. Nobody in Albania knew about our escape. So he said, finally convinced him, and he got lucky because he says, "What about my file?" I said, "That's okay, you got an A." So they gave him an A on the final. During the whole year that we were planning our escape, my cousin Pandi many times would say, "Well, I don't know, are we going to be okay?" He was a little skeptical, the whole time. But that night, there was no doubt, there was no stopping. Let's go, let's go, let's go. And at no point that night or until today, I dreaded doing what I did. I never felt bad. One interesting thing that I forgot to mention, and interesting, I didn't have it in the notes here, but the 42 days that they kept us in jail, so-called, in Greece, the very first 42 days. For those 42 days, and I think it was for maybe a few months after that, almost every night I had nightmares. And I mean nightmares where I would wake up sweating and heavy breathing and all that. And sometimes on the first 42 days, I was so out of it that I would scream and they would come and open the door and say, "What happened?" And all of them was trying to escape from Albania and being chased by the soldiers. And I mean nightmares. Luckily, I haven't had any of those lately. That's one part that was hard for me, because I knew that they would be punished. I didn't know how. So if you want to say, so I was selfish, I put myself, ahead, and I don't want to say it that way, but, I don't want to say I didn't care, but
But you did what you had to do. Basically.
I did what I had to do to get out of there. As it turned out, lucky, because two of my mother's brother were two brothers of my mother were in the party, in the Communist Party, so-called, and I think they had some influence in letting my mother stay in town rather than sending them to that town in the middle of Albania as a camp. So after that, I didn't feel that bad, but I also felt bad for my sister because I escaped. I was a traitor to the Albanian country. My sister couldn't get a decent job anywhere, and she had a very, very difficult job, and I don't want to say what it is, but the job is the one that caused her dying at age about 60-something or whatever. So those things, I carried them with me for a long, long time. And they got a little bit better when I finally brought my mother here back in 1990 for 6 months. So that I had a little relief in me after that. But to this day, I think about it, and what is interesting is that you don't really see things the same way when you're single as you see them when you have children. And after I had children, then I had many, many times when I cried for what I did. But that's life, Well, when I first came to the United States, not too many people knew where Albania was. These days, more people are familiar with it because it's been in the news and all that. But this is a map of this small portion of Europe. Here we have Italy, and right across the boot of Italy is this little country here that it's kind of yellowish orange, and that's Albania. It's right between Montenegro, Serbia, Macedonia, Kosovo, and Greece. And it is part of it on the Adriatic Sea and part of it in the Ionian Sea. Oh, in this area, back when the communists were over, Greece was the only free country. Albania, these other places like Montenegro, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Serbia, Macedonia, which now is North Macedonia, and Kosovo, they're all republics of Yugoslavia. So, but now none of them are communists. So. Now we're going to go to the big map of Albania. And right in the middle of Albania, we have the capital of Albania called Tirana. Around Albania are all the republics from Yugoslavia, what used to be Yugoslavia. And on the south here, we have Greece. Next to Tirana, we have the other city here, Korča, which is the city where I went to high school. And if you noticed a little something the same there is my last name is Korčari, which in Albanian means that I am from Korča, even though I was born and grew up in Darda. So next to Korča, we have the small town of Darda, which is very close to the border. And right across that border, my cousin and I escaped, went to Greece, and then right around this area here is the city of Kastoria, where they kept us for 42 days. The first year that I was in college, I had a very good friend of mine. He was from Westfield, Massachusetts. And at Christmas time, the school was closing for a month. And people had to go to their houses, but I had no place to go, so I was trying to figure out where I would go. So my friend said, why don't you come with me for Christmas, and stay at my house until we come back to school? And naturally, as young people and all that, I said, well, I'll come, but you have to find me a date. That was the condition. He says, oh, no problem, I'll find you a date. So we get to his house, and he called his girlfriend at the time, and she was happy that he was home. And he said to the girlfriend, he says, but you need to find another friend to bring because I have a friend of mine from school. So she called what now is my wife, Kathy. She called her and she told her the whole story. It says, this is what's happening, and Dean is home. He brought a friend of his, and he wants to go out on a date, and he's from Albania. And apparently my wife at that time had headed with blind dates, so her reaction was, I'm not going out with an albino, forget it. Thinking that Albania and albino are the same, but anyway. But my friend's girlfriend wanted to go out, so she called Kathy back and she says, okay, we're not going anywhere, but let's go out, do a little shopping, and then after that we'll go to the Westgate Bar and have a drink. Westgate Bar was a place where college students would go because there was a college in Westfield. She calls my friend and he says, okay, we'll meet you at Westgate at 8 o'clock. So 8 o'clock comes, we go there, and sure enough, they were there. So my friend hugged his girlfriend and all that, and the other girl looked at me and then looked away. For the longest time, she wouldn't even talk to me. She had her back turned at me like this. I was over there. And I'm going to my friend. I'm saying, what's going on here? He goes, I don't know. So at one point, then we went to the bathroom, and I said, I thought she said, well, I don't know. He said, I don't know what's going on. I said, listen, I've had it. I said, I'll give her one more chance, one more dance. If she doesn't look at me and doesn't talk to me, that's it. I'm going to get up, because the place was loaded with young students from the college. I said, that's it, I had it. So we got back, and right in the middle of the next dance, she turned around and started talking to me. And then we danced, and apparently that was the first step. So to make a long story short, she got home that night, and it was about after 12 o'clock. And her mother was washing her hair. So she walked in the house and she says, "Mom, I just met the guy I'm going to marry." So her mother flew up and said, "What do you mean?" So she told her about it. The next day for Christmas, we went to church. And when we got out of there, my current wife, Kathy, said, "I'm going to marry you." And I started laughing at her face, because at that time I was going with girls all over the place, and I had no, idea of marriage or any of that. And so I said, "Ha ha ha." Well, as it turned out, we ended up, she says that she has witches things, so she put the spell on me, and apparently she did. So, and we're still married, as a matter of fact. 2 months ago, was our 50th anniversary, wedding anniversary. Anyway, my mother had 2 sisters. One of them was in the city of Korça, and the other one was in Tirana, which is the capital of Albania. And the one from Tirana went to Korça with her husband and stayed with her sister for a couple days. And her huge and big mistake was that she told her sister that they were planning to escape. So the next day in the afternoon, they left Korça with the goal, they're saying to other people, that they were going to come to my town to visit my mother, who was their sister. So when they left, the sister from Korça went and reported that to the police. So the police went and caught them in between Korça and Darda. In other words, they hadn't passed Darda. So when they caught him there, they said, "Where are you going?" He says, "We're going to visit my sister in Darda." Needless to say, they didn't believe him, so they put them both in jail. My aunt spent 8 years in jail. Her husband got out in 5 years because he said that, it was her fault and it was her plans to escape, and he had nothing to do with it. So when I say this tell this story to people, they say, "Oh my God, one sister turned the other." It sounds tough and it sounds rushed, but if you think about it, if she hadn't reported, and in any way, for any reason, they found out that the other sister knew, her family, total family, her and her whole family, would be either in jail or at the camp. So it was unbelievable punishment. As a matter of fact, one family from a town close to us was planning to escape, and the man was talking to a friend of his somewhere, and another guy was walking and got close to them, and they stopped talking. So he reported it to the police. Said, "They must be planning something, because when I got there, they stopped talking." They caught them. They got the whole family. I have no idea where, but they put them somewhere. And, they said, "We weren't planning anything." So anyway, it was really tough. So in a way, I don't really blame my aunt for doing what she did, even though she got him in jail for a long time. So, yeah. What saved me from Vietnam is I let them draft me because I wanted to go to school. And my philosophy at the time, I said, what's the problem? There's more people getting killed in the United States by cars and other things than getting killed in Vietnam. So there's no big deal. So I let them draft me. I go, and after boot camp, they put me on what they called on-the-job training. And I was a computer repairman because before I got drafted, I was working for Digital Equipment Corporation. So they assigned me as a computer repairman to the center of the Missile Command, Army Missile Command in Huntsville. And in order to get my security, my top secret security, they had to check me out. Well, they could check me out back to Greece, but they couldn't check for my first 18 years in Albania. There was no way they could check. It took them a long, long time. And because they couldn't do it, finally they decided to give me a liar detect, test. So the interesting part with that test is they got me in a room, they hooked me up with all the probes all over the place, and I was sitting in a chair just like this by myself. And the guy said, okay, now we're going to practice all the questions that I'm going to ask you. We practiced them 2 times. What is your name? Where are you from? All the questions, all to the end. So he says, okay, now we're going to record it. So he left and he went behind me, and he was sitting behind me on a chair, and I was sitting here like this, staring at the wall with nobody. So he started asking questions, one question, yes, no. I kept answering questions. And about 3/4 of the way, he said, would you like to meet your mother? A question that we hadn't practiced. And honest to God, my chest went, I didn't know what to say, so I stopped like this. And I said, yes. So we continued to the end of the test, and then the guy called me and he says, I want to show you something. See, you're taking the test up to this point, and everything was going fine. Your breathing, your heart, all the things that they were detecting. And it get to a point, and he said, you see this line, how it's getting less and less moving? Well, he said, what happened at that time, he said, your brain was going to sleep. You were answering questions automatically without even thinking, you were like asleep there. So I had to wake you up. And that's when he asked me, would you like to meet your mother? And that thing went boom, boom, from one side of the thing to the other for a long time. He said, see, there I had to wake you up. So after that, they gave me the secret clearance, but I had only 7 months left in the service, and they wouldn't send you to Vietnam unless you had at least a year. So at that point, I knew I was safe. And at that point, I really didn't feel the same way I felt when I got in, because I had 3 very good friends that I made in the Army, especially like at the post where I was. And 2 of them got killed in Vietnam. And you knew it because they would post the people that got killed at the company so you would know. And that scared me. I said, okay, I don't want to go to Vietnam. So I got lucky and I didn't. So when I got out of the Army, I used the GI Bill. And as a matter of fact, they would give you 4 years of education. But after my first year, I said, wait a minute. And I found college pretty easy. So from that point to the end, I took enough credits to finish college in 3 years. I was taking 28 and 30 credits a semester. I had to get special permission from teachers because they said, you can't do it. So anyway, so after that, I enrolled again for my master's, but I had only 6 months left. And little did I know that I had 2 months left. And little did I know that if you enrolled for more than 2 months and you didn't have enough, they would carry you to the end. So anyway, they paid for my full education to the master's degree. During the planning, it was a little bit different. From the beginning, Pandi had a very close friend of his that was close to his house. His name was Peter. So at one point, Pandi said, how about if we get Peter too to escape with us? So I didn't know what to do at that point. I couldn't say no because I didn't want him to get mad at me. So I said, well, if you think He wants to do it. Let's let him in. So we got him in, and we started playing, the three of us. And after a while, we were playing as kids at a playground, not playground, but at a place where kids played in Darda. And at one point, I don't know exactly what happened or why, but the other guy, Peter, got mad at my cousin Pandi, and he said, "Hey, you be careful, because you know what I can do to you?" Pandi got out of there, and he said, he's out. So he went and told the guy that it's too risky. We're not going to do it. So we canceled the plans, and that's how the guy got out. As a matter of fact, 2-3 years ago, when I went to Albania for a visit, I met the guy.
He's still there?
He was still there, yeah. And he asked me, he said, "What happened?" So I told him, this is what happened. He says, "But I didn't say anything to him. I didn't do anything to him." I said, "I don't know, but, you got him mad, so you got out." The other thing he asked me is, "Did you ever tell anybody about me, that I was a third person?" And up to that point, in total honesty, I told him, nobody. I had never, and Pandi, we never mentioned it to anybody that he was at one point the third person, because you never know how the word gets to Albania, and he's dead. So we didn't open our mouth at all, up to that point. After that, when Albania got free, then it was a little bit easier. So then we told people there was a third person that didn't come. I was born right after the war ended in 1945, and my whole life I was under the communist government.
And what was that like?
What was that like? Well, I tell people sometimes, and when I say things, it seems almost like I'm making them up, but they're true. You could not, no matter who you were, if you didn't like anybody, if for whatever reason I didn't like Glenn, all I had to do is go to the police and say, "Glenn is thinking of escaping. There goes Glenn." The next day he would be gone. Nobody would see him. And the thing is that nobody would dare to ask what happened to Glenn, because they would end up with Glenn. So, everybody kept their mouth shut. You couldn't say anything. You couldn't even say anything bad about the police, let alone about anybody like in an official place, or about the government people.
So if you didn't like anybody, you could just say, "Hey."
Yep.
And then they...
Yep. Goodbye. That was that easy. Yeah. They had a very, very strict system. They had all the people, well, almost all the people, scared to the point that if they didn't say anything, the bad things would happen to them. So anything that would happen was reported to the police. As a matter of fact, for a long time, because I escaped in 1966, until 1990, anybody that went to Albania, especially from the United States, they wouldn't dare to go and meet my mother, because they were followed by the people there and reported. Another kind of interesting thing is I had an aunt here, my mother's sister, that was in Albania, in the United States for years and years before communists came there.
So she was your aunt?
Yeah, she was my aunt. And that was my hope, that, she would help me to come to the United States, and whatever. Well, unfortunately for her and for me, if you want to call it, the day that I went to Darda, my aunt from the United States went to Tirana for a visit. And the day that we escaped, my cousin and I escaped, she went to Korcha for a visit. As I was told by many people, she suffered a lot because she was more in interrogation than visit in Albania, because they thought that she had something to do with our escape. And when she came back to the United States, she didn't want to not talk to me, but she didn't want to hear my name. Nothing to do with me. Rumor is that they told her in Albania that if she helped me in any way, they would get her family. So I kind of don't blame her, but that's, yeah, they put her through the loop there.
But even though she was a U.S. citizen.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It's tough to walk around and not know who is behind you or who's going to get you or what's going to happen. You know, you try to be careful not to get anybody mad because, you know. Everybody was poor because you had whatever the government, everything was controlled. You know, you would get so much bread a day, you would get so, everything was rationed. And he probably was in a little bit better shape, but there were no families that you could say that they were well off, you know, and lived good. Because even if you had a ton of money, you couldn't get anything because they wouldn't give you anything. You would get so much milk a day. My brother-in-law would get up at 3 o'clock and go and get in line so he could get milk for his children. And he would get just a small thing of milk, and you couldn't get any more, nothing. Whatever they gave you, that's all you had. So money was no good there, even if you had it.